Hello all, welcome aboard. I will be your pilot wannabe for today's flight. We're going to be traveling from this small airport in Indiana that some people may have actually heard of to another small airport in Indiana that I'm betting no one's ever heard of. But I'll talk more about that when we're looking at the flight plan brief in just a few seconds. See you on the other side. Okay, here's the flight plan for today. This will be a short flight plan briefing. Is that a brief, I guess? Anyway, starting down here in, by the way, I should say this is skyvector.com, which is a free website you can do flight planning with. And if you're new to aviation or flight simulating, this may look like just a disaster of hieroglyphics to you, but over time we can go over some of the stuff I've learned about it. But we're starting out down here in KLAF, which Lima Alpha Foxtrot, and that is the Purdue University Airport in West Lafayette, Indiana. It's the one I was saying that some people may have heard of. It's the Purdue is the college that the first person to walk on the moon graduated from, and the last person to walk on the moon so far graduated from Purdue. I don't know if any of the people in between did, but anyway, we're going from LAF up to KVPZ, Victor Papa Zulu, and that is the Porter County Regional Airport in Valparaiso, Indiana. That's the one I figured no one has ever heard of, except for maybe, people in Porter County. But anyway, the reason we're doing this flight is a couple of reasons, actually. One, I live about 10 minutes from LAF right now, and I grew up about 15 or 20 minutes from VPZ. And this is the flight that I tend to do with any new add-on aircraft I get. It's sort of my shakedown flight. So I wanted something easy to fly today because I'm mainly going to be, for at least the first half of the flight, talking about what I want to try to do with my YouTube channel. And so basically I'm just going to, kind of breeze through getting the plane off the ground and everything while I'm talking. And I wanted something easy and an easy flight. And so here we are. But next we should get down to the ramp and check out the airplane we're using today. See you there. Okay, here we are at LAF on the ground, and we're going to be flying this bone stock Diamond DA62 that came with the original version of Microsoft Flight Simulator. And there's more interesting planes we could be flying, but there's a couple of reasons I wanted to start with this. One is that it is easy to fly. You can't really break it. I mean, my understanding is the real plane is fairly easy to fly, so that translates over into the simulator. But then there's also the fact that it, like all of these stock planes that come with the game, is a magic airplane that will never suffer any failures, electronic failures, mechanical failures. I have the damage turned on, so if I hit something or try to land without putting the landing gear down or something of that nature, of course I'll get the black screen of death telling me what I did wrong. But I can't, blow up the engines or anything like that. You could theoretically start up the engines, leave the parking brake on, run them up to full power. I could walk away and go make French toast or have a cup of coffee and sit on the back porch, and the plane, once it runs out of fuel, the engines will stop, but otherwise it'll be fine. I prefer to fly the more complicated add-on planes where you actually have engine damage modeled and you can, have random failures crop up and stuff like that. And we'll definitely be getting into planes like that very shortly. I just wanted to start with this because it's simple, and also because I wanted to give you a little bit of a tour of the planes that I've spent the most time in since I got the simulator several years ago. And when I first got the simulator, this was the plane I spent the most time in. Using just a controller, keyboard, and mouse, I flew this plane from here all the way to Tibet, I think, in and around the world flight. And at that point, I had ended up switching to other planes, but I got some add-on planes and more interesting planes. But I spent a lot of time in this one, and so we're gonna do the first flight of the channel in this one, and then we'll move on to more interesting stuff. I'm using the drone camera right now, and it's kind of like what I like to think of as Microsoft Walking Simulator. But before we get in the plane, which again, it's a magic airplane, the doors don't open, but we'll magically pop inside. But before we get in, I wanted to point out this guy over here. Look at him. I don't know what's going on with him. Usually, I've seen planes doing this before, but usually it's a lot faster. He's doing kind of a slow one. If he was going faster, I would try to find some hip-hop music or something to play. He's like breakdancing, but I don't know. Maybe a waltz. He's going kind of slow. Anyway, let's pop into the plane. Okay. All right. I'm not really going to go over how to fly this plane or what I'm doing until we get into more interesting planes. Mainly, I want to just talk about what my plans are for the channel. So I'm going to go ahead and just fire this thing up, and we'll get rolling. I might mention what I'm doing here and there, but I'm not going to go over the checklists and all that kind of stuff. I normally will in the future. I plan to. Normally, when I fly just for myself before I decided to start filming, I try to fly pretty legit. I run the checklists, and if it's a plane with any sort of a pre-flight check you can do walking around it, I like to do that. I like to be as legit as possible, be as realistic as possible to the best of my knowledge, because I'm not a real pilot, but I like to be as realistic as possible. It's more fun that way. But we're going to forego all that for this first introductory video. I'm figuring we're going to have to probably break the flight into 2 videos, at part 1 and part 2, because I would like to keep my videos under 30 minutes. I'm not sure that's going to be any sort of a hard and fast rule or anything, but I would like to be under 30 minutes. So, and when I have made this flight in the past, if I'm doing anything at first, in this case, I'm doing a bunch of talking and stuff, but if I'm, doing a checklist and all that other kind of stuff, it takes like 45 minutes. So we'll play with the timing. We're probably gonna at least take off and climb and maybe get into the cruise before I would think about breaking it and, making a part 2 out of the remainder of the cruise, the descent, and the landing. That being said, if it does end up going that way, I'm planning on, for the second half, actually going over some instructional material. So by the second video, even if it's the second part of this flight, I want to start operating a little more like I'll want to be operating for the rest of my videos. So let's see, we got this thing set up. Yeah, I was going to say this plane is a lot like the cliche of a beauty pageant contestant. It's attractive and shapely, but not very deep. It has no systems depth. The circuit breakers aren't modeled, and you can't even do an accurate run-up before takeoff because the ECU check buttons, ECU test buttons are inoperative. Yeah, it's, you know, it's pretty, but compared to some of the really cool add-ons, it's kind of on the dumb side. Another thing, normally I input the flight plan into the avionics manually, but again, was trying to just skim over things this time so I could talk about what I want to do at the channel. But while we're looking at the avionics here, I want to mention something that I forgot to mention in the flight plan briefing. Apparently I made the brief too brief. I added this waypoint in here. You get a little closer. It's waypoint I always add in when I'm flying between LAF and VPZ. It's Rodney right here, this waypoint. And the reason I do that is all of this dark bordered area you're seeing here is an MOA, or actually like overlapping MOAs. And the MOA is a military operations airspace or military operations area. And I don't know all that much about MOAs. I believe in real life, if you're going to fly through one, you're supposed to call them and tell them when and where and what altitude you think you're going to be flying through and find out if it's okay. So I figure in a case like this where it's very easy to skirt around the MOA, I'm thinking I would probably be doing that. So I always just pick Rodney because it's easy to remember. So anyway, I should say that's the flight plan. We'll go ahead and get rolling. The next thing I really should tell you guys is that I am very much not a real pilot. That guy's still breakdancing out there. Anyway, we're gonna get rolling over to runway 28 for takeoff. But anyway, I am very much not a real pilot. I went for I forget, they don't call it a discovery flight, but I went for something similar to that. Oh, that's runway 23. I had to move my plane before I started recording because it was too close to a really noisy fuel truck that was just driving around in circles. I don't normally take off from over, or not take off, but I don't normally start up over here in this part of the ramp. Anyway, where was I? Get over to runway 28. But yeah, they don't call it a discovery flight, but like a flight school, you can, give them like $150 and they'll take you and do a pre-trip around like a Cessna 172 and take you up and then let you take the controls, and the whole thing takes about an hour and all that. Well, I went for one of those, and I was talking with the kid because the flight instructor kid was at least 30 years younger than me, at least. Maybe 32 years younger than me. Anyway, so the kid, we started talking about Microsoft Flight Simulator, and I was telling him all about, how much I've how many hours I've done it and what my favorite planes are and this and that. So the kid ends up letting me actually start up the Cessna 172. He let me actually taxi all the way over to runway 23 and let me conduct the whole takeoff and everything. So basically I went from cold and dark plane to 3,000 feet to the north of the airport over the windmills, which you'll see here in a few minutes, entirely operating the plane myself. I don't know if you're supposed to do that, but it's not like anything went wrong or anything. When we went to come back and land, I told him that I wanted him to land because it was actually a pretty gusty, windy day. So I kind of thought, yeah, my landings in the simulator aren't great, as you will see, and I just thought I don't want to be in the papers for being the guy that crashes at LAF for the, I don't know when the last time they would have had a crash near LAF. I've certainly never heard of one. Anyway, but yeah, I'm not a real pilot, and I don't want anything I ever say or do to be mistaken for real, legitimate information. This is all just for fun. The simulator, and when it's said and done, the simulator is for fun. And no matter how much it can be useful for people. Wow, the fuel pumps are really loud when you're wearing headphones. I'm not usually wearing headphones. Anyway, people can use the simulator for legit training purposes, at least to help you remember things. Remember how to do certain procedures and things. But at the end of the day, obviously the simulator is just for fun. As I said before, we can't really do any kind of a run-up, but it doesn't matter. This is a magic airplane that will never fail us. The only thing that can ever get it would be, software glitch, like the glitch where the G1000 screens here go black. I haven't had that happen in a long time, so supposedly they fixed it. I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out happening again. There's other glitches that can happen, which I'll get into with other planes when I've had, like if we're flying the plane that I had a glitch in, I'll probably tell you about it when we're in it. But anyway, there's a number of things you're supposed to do in the real DA-62 before taking off like this, but we're not going to do any of that. We're just going to take off, and I'm going to get the autopilot on as quickly as I can so I can talk to you more about the channel before this video gets too terribly long. I don't actually remember what the rotate speed is. I'm guessing it's around 80. I haven't really flown this plane for a couple of years, probably. Now we've got a positive rate of climb. I'm going to tap the brakes and bring up the landing gear. Actually did break the landing gear on this plane one time in the around the world flight. I was landing on the island of Crete in the Mediterranean, and I had actually popped out the landing gear at too high of a speed. I really didn't know what I was doing back then. Not that I'm any sort of a legitimate expert now, but I really didn't know what I was doing back then. And it's kind of hard to actually put the landing gear out too fast in this plane. It's in real life, this is one of the safest planes you can fly, and one of the cool things about it is it has a pretty high, I don't remember the exact speed, but it's hard to go too fast to extend the landing gear. But I managed to do it, and I instead of having 3 green lights, I had like 2 green lights, and but visually it looked like my landing gear was down, so I went ahead and landed. And actually, the landing went off without a hitch. And when I taxied, when I left the runway and got onto a taxiway, I went over a bump, and then I got the black screen of death, and it said that I had collapsed the landing gear, which is, interesting. What's really interesting is the plane is not responding to the autopilot. Like I said, I haven't really flown this in a couple of years. I haven't flown any stock airplane in a couple of years. Okay, let's go ahead and see if it... Yeah, the autopilot just isn't coming on. There we go. Now it's engaging the autopilot. Okay, now I've got, climbing at 700 feet to go to 45. Switching to GPS to follow the magenta line. That's everyone's favorite color for a line in aviation, apparently. Magenta. Okay, so, and remember I said I couldn't blow up the engines, which is a good thing, because I've left them at 99% load for this whole time. So we'll bring that down to 90%, or as close as I can get to it on both engines. That works better than it used to. When the game, I will occasionally call the simulator a game. I know that offends some people, but it's going to slip out sometimes. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, when the simulator first came out and I was first flying this plane, this engine load indicator did not work right, and it made flying the plane different. It made it different than it should be. Actually, a little harder than it should be in a way that wouldn't be in real life, which I don't think you want that. Anyway, now that we're flying along, I'm gonna turn off my landing lights and taxi lights. Let's see. Other stuff I want to talk about. I have gotten really far behind. Yeah, I covered that I'm not a real pilot. I've got some scribbled notes here. Oh yeah, covering exclusively Xbox. There are YouTube channels that talk about this simulator on the Xbox, but I haven't really seen. I mean, I'm sure there is other people that are exclusively on the Xbox, but I'm intending to be exclusively on the Xbox. Most of the information concerning how the planes operate and whatnot, that's going to be the same regardless of platform. But being exclusively on the Xbox, I can talk about things that those of us who are on the Xbox experience, including people on PCs not taking us as seriously. But it's not like I've had anybody, not like I talked to enough people at this point in my life to have anybody, give me crap about being on the Xbox. I'm not going, let's see, the next thing, I'm not going to be giving any sort of tutorials in order that would make any sort of sense. I'm not, if I wanted to be like, okay, this is a tutorial for beginners, then I would start on the flight simulator main screen, and we would go into the world map, and I'd talk about how to do a flight plan, stuff like that. And I probably will do something like that at some point, but I'm not going to start there. I'm going to demonstrate the things I've learned sort of just in a willy-nilly order as I feel like it, or as they come up, is the plan. So, sorry, can't make any promises about learning things in a helpful order, but it's just kind of how I want to do things. The idea of trying to organize the flights I do and the videos I make into an order that would make sense as a tutorial for a beginner just sounds tedious and kind of boring. I mean, I feel like you could probably make 20-30 videos out of one flight if you were trying to cover every little thing that you were doing, starting with making your flight plan in the world map. It just seems like it could be tedious. So we're gonna skip around. I'm gonna always try to do full flights, even if I do have to break the video up into a part 1 and part 2 to stay under 30 minutes. I know for me, when I'm scrolling through videos, if it's a 25-minute video, I'll be like, okay. If it's a 45-minute video, that seems like more of a commitment, even if the 25-minute video is part 1 and then there's a 20-minute video part 2, and I end up watching both, you'd think that would be the same, but somehow clicking on that larger number seems a little more daunting at times. So I want to try to stay under 30 minutes, not promising that I won't ever have longer, but I want to, like I said, I want to, if I have to have a part 1 and part 2, I want to show the actual startup of the plane, and show the flight plan and the startup of the plane and the everything you should be doing, checklists and whatnot before taking off, and show at least the taxi, run up, takeoff, climb, maybe some of the cruise before cutting off to go to a part 2 where you'd get whatever remainder of the cruise and descent and landing and checklist for shutdown, and maybe some kind of a like debrief over what happened in the flight. So that's my plan. I have ideas for sort of concurrent different series that I want to do. Always been a little foggy on the plural of series. I assume it's just series and not serieses, but I have an idea for, I don't know, 4 or 5 different concurrent serieses that I would like to do, and we'll get into that later. Let's see, looking at my little cheat sheet here. Oh yeah, at some point I'll illuminate what hardware I'm using, what peripherals I'm using, because I've got a bit of a setup here. The Xbox is limited on the peripherals that you can get, and so I probably have pretty close to as complex a setup as you can get, but I don't want to take the time right now to talk about all of that. On the subject though, if you do happen to be new to Microsoft Flight Simulator and you are flying on the Xbox, sorry, I just realized I should knock the engine down. Never tried to actually talk about a bunch of other stuff while I'm flying, and I'm doing a miserable job of it, I have to say. We might end up having to do active pause at some point because I'll get too far along in the flight. Anyway, on the subject of peripherals, if you are new to Microsoft Flight Simulator and you're on the Xbox and all you have is a controller, it is going to be a lot more like a video game. There are videos I've seen. Well, I didn't watch them because that sounded like too much, but there are videos out there showing how you can use the controller to do absolutely every function you would need to do during a flight. But really, you need to get a keyboard and mouse. If you get a keyboard and mouse, that will just completely make it possible for you to do much more complex things in the simulator and have a lot more legitimate experience. So, and you can get a wireless keyboard and mouse set, like a Logitech or something like that, for less than the price of most of the add-on airplanes in the simulator. So, just I highly recommend getting a keyboard and mouse. And I just now remembered to turn the fuel pumps off, which is fine. Hopefully I remember to turn them back on before landing. Anyway, moving on. I'm looking at my cheat sheet here. Let's see. Well, I'm getting pretty close to the end of what I want to say. I guess the only other thing is I want to tell you the reason that I wanted to start the channel. I've been flying on the simulator pretty much since it became available on the Xbox, and the reason I waited till now, I guess, to actually do this, actually start a channel about it, is I reached a point where I feel like I know a lot. There's a lot I don't know. My knowledge of aviation and even just aviation in the simulator is probably kind of like Swiss cheese, a little bit dense in some places and completely empty in other places. But at this point, I can jump into my favorite plane, completely input a complicated flight plan into the avionics, conduct the flight even if the weather's bad, do an ILS approach, an instrument landing, and do all the checklists and do everything as legit as possible. And when it's all said and done, I have sort of an unreasonable feeling of satisfaction, like accomplishment. And I just kind of want to share that with people. And it'll give me sort of more of a reason to be conducting flights. Not that I really needed a reason before, but this will give me more of a reason. And it'll give me a reason to be talking to myself while I'm doing it, which I've been tending to do more and more of. So, there's that. The whole simulator, I use it as fantasy fuel. I try to imagine what life would be like if I had the money and the time to just buy an expensive airplane like this and just go wherever I wanted to. And so it's fantasy fuel. But all right, we're gonna go ahead and stop for now, and I'll check the time, and if it's going long, we'll make it into a part 2. Either way, I'll see you soon.